Captain Lee Minho stepped into the massive war chamber aboard the orbital station Nexus Prime, his black military boots echoing softly against the crystalline floor. The room stretched before him like a cathedral of technology, its domed ceiling displaying a real-time hologram of the galaxy's spiral arms. 12 different alien species had gathered around the central tactical table, each delegation occupying their own section based on ancient protocols and mutual distrust. The air hummed with tension and the low vibrations of alien languages being translated through neural implants. Minho took his assigned seat in the back corner, noting how the other representatives had positioned themselves as far from the human delegation as possible. Earth's chair sat alone, isolated like a punishment desk in a cosmic classroom. The Vexari delegation dominated the room's center, their reptilian forms towering nearly 3 meters tall. General Krex, their war leader, possessed scales that shifted from deep purple to crimson when agitated, and right now they blazed like warning lights. His clawed hands gestured aggressively as he outlined their preferred battle strategy against the approaching Devourer fleet. "We strike hard and fast," Krex declared, his voice carrying the rumble of distant thunder. "Our plasma cannons will punch through their armor like paper. Honor demands we meet them head-on, ship to ship, warrior to warrior." The crystalline Altine admirals chimed in harmony, their translucent bodies refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. Admiral Veltar's voice resonated like wind through crystal caves. "The Altine Collective agrees. Our solar lances have enough stored energy to crack a moon. We'll position our dreadnoughts in formation Alpha 7 and unleash concentrated fire." Minho leaned forward slightly, clearing his throat. "If I may suggest, the human wishes to speak," interrupted Commander Zephan of the Ethereal Syndicate, his gaseous form flickering with what might have been amusement. "How fascinating. Please enlighten us with your species' wisdom." The sarcasm hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Minho stood slowly, activating his holographic display. The tactical projection showed Devourer ship formations from humanity's previous encounters, highlighting their adaptive armor patterns and defensive capabilities. "Based on our analysis of Devourer technology, direct assault tactics have a 73% failure rate. Their ships learn from each attack, adapting their defenses in real time. I recommend coordinated strikes targeting their sensor networks first, then." General Krex's scales flared bright crimson. "Cowardly ambush tactics. You speak of hiding in shadows and striking the wounded. Where is the honor in such methods?" The Corvan delegates nodded in agreement, their insectoid mandibles clicking approval. Admiral Threx of the Corvan Imperial Navy rose from his seat, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture of disgust. "Humans lack honor in combat. Your species fights like scavengers, picking at scraps while true warriors face death with dignity." Admiral Veltar's harmonic voice joined the chorus of disapproval. "The Collective has reviewed human military history. Your tactics rely on deception, guerrilla warfare, and technological trickery. Such methods are beneath civilized species." Minho felt the weight of 12 alien gazes upon him, each one filled with varying degrees of contempt, pity, or dismissal. The Quantari observer, a being of pure energy contained within a mechanical shell, projected static that roughly translated to laughter. Even the normally neutral hegemony representatives shifted uncomfortably, clearly embarrassed to be associated with humanity's primitive approach to warfare. Instead of arguing, Minho simply nodded and activated his neural recorder. The device, invisible to alien sensors, began documenting everything. Every fleet position displayed on the tactical table, every weakness revealed in their grand strategies, every dismissive comment that showed their blind spots and arrogance. While the alien commanders debated the glory of frontal assaults and honorable combat, Minho quietly ran calculations through his tactical implant. The Vexari fleet's plasma cannons had impressive firepower but terrible energy efficiency. The Altine solar lances required 12 minutes to fully charge between shots. The Corvan ships prioritized aesthetics over armor distribution, leaving their engine sections vulnerable. The War Council continued for 3 hours, with each species trying to outdo the others in terms of firepower and tactical brilliance. They spoke of ancient victories legendary battles and the importance of meeting one's enemy with courage and honor. Not one of them mentioned survival rates, casualty projections, or mission success probability. Admiral Threx stood at the chamber's center, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. It is decided, then. The combined fleet will approach in battle formation Omega, with Corvan ships leading the charge. Vexari forces will provide heavy fire support, while Altine vessels deliver the killing blow with their solar lances. He paused, seeming to remember something unpleasant. The human fleet will remain in the rear, providing support duties, medical assistance, supply runs, perhaps salvage operations after our victory. The other delegates hummed, clicked, or vibrated their agreement. Minho's silence throughout the planning session had been interpreted as either incompetence or acceptance of humanity's inferior status. They saw a quiet observer taking notes and assumed he lacked the tactical genius to contribute meaningfully to their grand strategy. As the meeting concluded and the alien delegations filed out, each group already discussing their anticipated glory in the coming battle, Minho remained seated. His neural recorder had captured terabytes of data: fleet compositions, weapon specifications, tactical preferences, communication protocols, and most importantly, the complete absence of adaptive thinking among Earth's so-called allies. The chamber's lights dimmed automatically as the last alien representative departed, leaving Minho alone with the holographic display still showing the Devourer fleet's approach vector. In 18 hours, they would reach the system's edge. In 24 hours, the most powerful military alliance in galactic history would engage them in glorious battle. And in 25 hours, Minho calculated, most of them would be dead. The void of space erupted into a spectacular light show as the combined alien armada burst from hyperspace in perfect military formation. 1,200 warships arranged themselves across a 100-kilometer front, their various energy shields creating a breathtaking aurora display against the star-filled darkness. The Vexari dreadnoughts blazed with crimson force fields, while Altine crystal ships shimmered like captured rainbows. Corvan vessels pulsed with golden energy, and the ethereal syndicate's ghost ships flickered in and out of visible spectrum. Admiral Threx's flagship, the Mandible of Honor, took point position at the formation's spear tip. The massive Corvan battleship stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its 4 weapon pods already glowing with charged plasma energy. Behind it, a wedge of smaller destroyers and cruisers formed an arrowhead that could punch through a planet's core. "All vessels, this is Admiral Threx," his voice boomed across the fleet communication channels. "Today we write history in fire and glory. The Devourer scourge has plagued our galaxy for too long. Today we show them the fury of civilized species united in righteous warfare." The Vexari war fleet responded with thunderous roars transmitted through their ship speakers, while the Altine vessels sang in perfect harmony. Each species added their own battle cries to the cosmic symphony, creating a wall of sound that would have been audible across several star systems if space carried sound waves. Far behind this magnificent display of military might, Captain Lee, Minho's fleet hung in space like a collection of forgotten industrial equipment. 30 human vessels spread across a loose formation, each ship no larger than a standard freight hauler. They looked more like a merchant convoy that had wandered into a war zone by accident than Earth's contribution to the greatest military alliance in galactic history. The human ships bore names like Soul Wanderer, Busan Harvester, and Incheon Prospector. Their hulls carried mining equipment, industrial fabricators, and what appeared to be civilian-grade sensors. No massive gun batteries, no gleaming energy shields, no intimidating weapon pods bristling with destructive potential. Commander Zex, of the Vexari 3rd Squadron, couldn't help but laugh as he observed the human formation through his tactical display. "Look at this pathetic sight," he transmitted to his wing leaders. "They brought mining ships to a war. I've seen asteroid belt operations with more firepower." His subordinates joined in the amusement, their reptilian voices creating a chorus of mockery. "Perhaps they plan to drill holes in the Devourer ships," suggested Captain Vorth, "or maybe they'll offer to refine their hull metals for them." The alien commanders had indeed switched to encrypted private channels, cutting humanity out of their tactical communications network. As far as they were concerned, the humans were cargo haulers along for the ride, useful only for cleanup duties after the real warriors finished their work. On the bridge of his flagship Gangnam Runner, Minho sat quietly in his captain's chair, surrounded by displays showing data streams that would have confused most alien tacticians. Instead of traditional weapons targeting systems, his screens showed biological scanners, molecular analyzers, and quantum signature detectors. His crew of 24 worked with calm efficiency, their movements precise and purposeful. Lieutenant Park Ji-soo, his tactical officer, glanced up from her console. "Captain, the alien fleets are beginning their attack run. Should we move to support positions?" "Maintain current distance," Minho replied softly. "Let them have their moment of glory." The combined alien armada surged forward like a metallic tsunami, their engines creating brilliant trails of exotic matter exhaust. The sight was genuinely magnificent, hundreds of ships moving in perfect coordination, their various technologies creating a display of power that could be seen from neighboring star systems. Admiral Threx's voice rang out across the fleet channels. "All ships prepare to engage. Show these Devourers what happens when they threaten civilized space." The Devourer fleet waited ahead like a dark mirror of the attacking force. 50 massive motherships, each one a kilometer-long amalgamation of organic technology and adaptive armor. Their hulls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, and strange appendages writhed along their surfaces like mechanical tentacles. Unlike the orderly alien formation, the Devourers clustered in seemingly random patterns, their ships occasionally merging briefly before separating again. The first salvo from the Allied fleet lit up the void like a newborn star. Vexari plasma. Cannons unleashed torrents of superheated energy, while Altine solar lances fired concentrated beams of crystallized sunlight. Corvan particle accelerators added streams of antimatter, and the ethereal syndicate contributed weapons that existed partially in other dimensions. The combined firepower should have vaporized the leading Devourer ships instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. The enemy vessels absorbed the massive energy discharge with barely a flicker. Their adaptive armor analyzed each incoming attack, shifted its molecular structure, and became immune to that specific type of damage within. Seconds. The Devourer response came immediately. Biomechanical weapon pods erupted from their hulls like sprouting flowers, each one targeting a different Allied ship with surgical precision. Energy bolts that seemed to phase between dimensions tore through Corvan shields as if they were paper. 2 destroyers, the Honor's Edge and Valor's Strike, exploded in brilliant fireballs that briefly outshone the system's primary star. "Impossible!" Admiral Threx shouted over the communications chaos. "Our intelligence indicated their armor could adapt, but not this quickly." More Devourer weapons emerged, each one different from the last. Some fired living projectiles that burrowed through ship hulls. Others released clouds of nanoscopic organisms that ate through metal faster than the ship's auto-repair systems could compensate. Still others simply reached out with gravity manipulators and crushed vessels like empty cans. The magnificent alien formation began to crumble as ships broke ranks to avoid the devastating return fire. What had started as a coordinated assault quickly devolved into desperate individual battles for survival. Through it all, Captain Minho watched from his position far behind the main battle. His sensors weren't focused on the spectacular energy exchanges or the tactical movements of the major fleets. Instead, they tracked much smaller details, the molecular signatures of Devourer blood when their ships took minor damage, the electromagnetic patterns of their adaptive processes, the quantum fluctuations that occurred when their biotechnology interfaced with captured alien equipment. "Sir," Lieutenant Park reported quietly, "we are detecting cellular degradation in the damaged Devourer vessels. Their adaptive armor requires living tissue to function properly." Minho nodded slowly, his fingers moving across his command console with practiced precision. "Begin harvesting protocol. Deploy the nanobots to grid sectors 7 through 12. Target only the vessels showing biological stress indicators." His crew responded without questions or dramatic declarations. They simply activated systems that the alien observers had assumed were mining equipment. Clouds of microscopic machines began streaming from the human ships, invisible to conventional sensors, moving through space like digital ghosts toward their designated targets. The real battle was about to begin, and the aliens fighting for their lives ahead had no idea that the quiet humans behind them had been preparing for this moment for months. While the massive alien warships continued their devastating exchange of energy weapons, creating explosions that could be seen from 3 star systems away, Captain Lee Min-ho's modest fleet began moving with a completely different purpose. The human vessels didn't charge forward screaming battle cries or announce their intentions over communication channels. Instead, they drifted between the larger ships like maintenance craft, so unremarkable that both sides of the battle ignored them completely. The Soul Wanderer passed within 50 meters of a burning Corvan destroyer, its hull scarred by Devourer bioweapons. The crew inside was fighting fires and trying to restore life support, completely unaware that the small human ship nearby had just released 3 million microscopic machines into the vacuum of space. These weren't the simple mining drones or repair bots that alien intelligence had catalogued in their files about human technology. Each nanobot was smaller than a virus, but contained processing power equivalent to an entire alien computer system. More importantly, they carried genetic material harvested from dozens of different species, including samples of devourer tissue that humanity had been secretly collecting for the past 8 months. The nanobots moved through space using ion propulsion systems so tiny they were invisible to conventional sensors. They navigated by reading electromagnetic signatures and gravitational fluctuations, following trails that led directly to their targets. Each drone carried a specific mission protocol, but they could also communicate with each other, share data, and adapt their programming in real time based on what they discovered. The first wave of nanobots reached the Devourer mothership, Consumption, Herv worlds while it was busy firing bioplasma cannons at a group of Altine crystal ships. The massive vessel's hull rippled with organic patterns, its adaptive armor constantly shifting to counter incoming attacks. But the nanobots weren't attacking the armor directly. Instead, they searched for microscopic flaws, stress fractures, caused by rapid adaptation, molecular weak points where organic tissue interfaced with mechanical components, tiny gaps in the bioarmor's cellular structure. Finding a fracture no wider than a human hair, the first nanobots slipped inside the Devourer ship like ghosts passing through walls. Once inside, they began their real work. Each nanobot carried a payload of engineered viruses specifically designed to target Devourer biotechnology. But instead of simply destroying systems, these viruses rewrote them. The ship's organic neural network, which controlled everything, from weapons targeting to life support, suddenly found itself processing new commands. The nanobots didn't shut down systems violently. That would have triggered immune responses. Instead, they convinced the ship's own biological components that maintenance protocols were running. Power levels slowly decreased as the ship's brain believed it was entering a rest cycle. Weapons gradually powered down as targeting systems reported successful completion of combat objectives. Within 20 minutes, the consumption of worlds had quietly died from the inside out, though its external appearance remained unchanged. The crew inside experienced what felt like a gradual system failure. Lights dimming, air recycling slowing, gravity generators reducing power. By the time they realized something was wrong, the nanobots had already replicated themselves using the ship's own biomass and moved on to the next target. Lieutenant Park Ji-soo monitored the process from her station aboard the Gangnam Runner, watching as biological signatures throughout Grid 7 began flickering out one by one. Target acquisition successful on vessels designated Alpha through Mu, she reported quietly. Beginning replication cycle for secondary dispersal. Captain Min-ho nodded, his attention focused on a 3-dimensional tactical display that showed something no alien sensor could detect. The spread of nanobots through the Devourer fleet, like a slow-motion explosion. Each infected ship became a manufacturing center, producing millions more nanobots using the enemy's own resources. The beauty of the system lay in its invisibility. While Admiral Threx's ships exchanged devastating plasma fire with Devourer biocannons, creating spectacular light shows that dominated everyone's attention. The real battle was happening at a molecular level. The nanobots moved from ship to ship, using debris clouds as cover, or simply drifted through space until they encountered another target. "Sir," reported Chief Engineer Kim Do-hyun from his console, "Grid 7 is showing cascade failure across all biological systems. Estimated time to complete neural shutdown is 14 minutes. On the external battlefield, the results began manifesting in ways that confused both sides. A Devourer heavy cruiser that had been decimating Vexari frigates suddenly stopped firing, its bioplasma cannons going dark one by one. Its hull continued, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns, making it appear fully operational, but no weapons emerged from its organic weapon pods. Admiral Threx noticed the change immediately. "Grid 7 enemy vessels have ceased fire," he announced over the fleet channels. "All ships concentrate attacks on the disabled targets." The alien fleet redirected their firepower toward the apparently crippled Devourer ships, not realizing they were attacking vessels that were already dead. The nanobots had been so thorough that even the emergency systems had been convinced to shut down peacefully. But Minho wasn't finished. While the aliens celebrated what they assumed was a tactical victory, his nanobots were already spreading to Grid 8, then Grid 9. Each new infection point became a hub for further expansion, creating an exponential growth pattern that would have impressed any mathematician. The Busan Harvester drifted past a cluster of Devourer support vessels, releasing its own payload of specialized nanobots designed for smaller targets. These drones carried different programming. Instead of shutting down major systems, they focused on communication networks and sensor arrays. Within minutes, entire squadrons of Devourer fighters found themselves blind and deaf, unable to coordinate with their motherships or each other. The systematic destruction was beautiful in its precision. Unlike the alien approach of overwhelming firepower and direct confrontation, the human method was surgical, quiet, and absolutely merciless. Each nanobot knew exactly what it was supposed to do, executed its mission with perfect efficiency, and then moved on to the next target without fanfare or celebration. From his command chair, Minho watched the tactical display as red dots representing active Devourer vessels began turning gray across multiple grid sectors. The enemy fleet was dying from within, killed by microscopic machines that they couldn't detect, couldn't fight, and couldn't understand. The aliens continued their spectacular battle, unaware that their quiet human allies had already won the war. Plasma cannons roared, solar lances blazed, and energy shields flared in brilliant displays of military might. But behind the scenes, humanity's patient, methodical approach was proving far more effective than all the galaxy's advanced weaponry combined. In another 30 minutes, the Devourer fleet would be nothing more than empty hulls drifting through space, killed not by heroes or honor, but by tiny machines that understood the most fundamental truth of warfare. Sometimes the quietest weapons are the deadliest. The bridge of Admiral Threx's flagship shook violently as another Devourer bioplasma bolt struck their weakening shields. Sparks flew from overloaded control panels, and the acrid smell of burning circuits filled the air. Through the massive viewscreen, Threx watched in horror as the Corvan destroyer, Blade of Righteousness, broke apart in a cascade of explosions. Its crew of 800 warriors lost in seconds. "Damage report," Threx barked, his forearms working frantically across multiple control surfaces. "Forward shields at 18%, his tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking with stress. "Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. We've lost half our plasma cannon arrays." Around them, the once mighty alien armada was falling apart. Vexari dreadnoughts drifted powerless through space, their crimson hulls split open like cracked eggs. Ultine crystal ships had gone dark, their beautiful rainbow light fading to grey. The ethereal syndicate's ghost vessels flickered weakly, barely maintaining cohesion in normal space. What made the situation truly desperate was that the Devourer fleet appeared completely unharmed. Their massive motherships continued pulsing. With bioluminescent patterns, their weapon pods constantly sprouting new configurations of biocannons and gravity manipulators. Every few minutes, Another alien ship would explode under concentrated devourer fire, while the enemy seemed to absorb damage like it was nothing. "Sir," Communications Officer Zelks called out, his voice barely audible over the sound of failing systems. "We're receiving distress calls from the Altine flagship. Admiral Veltar is requesting immediate evacuation. Their core is going critical. Threx." Felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of warfare, pure helpless panic. His tactical training told him to retreat, to preserve what remained of the fleet. But his pride, the honor of the Corvan people, demanded that he fight to the death rather than admit defeat. That's when he made the most difficult decision of his military career. "Open a channel to the human fleet," he ordered, each word feeling like poison in his throat. The communications officer looked surprised. "Sir, we cut them out of our tactical network hours ago. They're still maintaining position in the rear support zone." "I don't care," Threx roared. "Human fleet, respond immediately." The reply came with infuriating calmness, as if Captain Minho was commenting on the weather, rather than responding to a desperate plea for help. "We're here, Admiral Threx." Through gritted teeth, fighting against every instinct that told him. To maintain Corvan pride, Threx forced out the words, "Your assistance is required." On the bridge of the Gangnam Runner, Captain Lee Minho sat perfectly relaxed in his command chair, surrounded by displays that told a completely different story than what the alien sensors were reporting. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Park, Jasu, was quietly coordinating the final phases of their nanobot deployment, while the rest of his crew worked with the calm efficiency of surgeons performing a routine operation. "Display current operational status," Minho said softly. The main holographic display lit up with a three-dimensional map of the battlefield, but instead of showing the energy signatures and shield readings that alien sensors tracked, it revealed something far more significant. Biological activity indicators spread across the Devourer fleet like a medical scan, showing the true health of each enemy vessel. "I've been assisting for the past 2 hours," Minho replied to Admiral Threx, his voice carrying across the fleet communication channels for the first time since the battle began. "My nanobots have compromised most of their fleet. They're running on emergency power." The alien bridge crews fell silent as they processed this impossible claim. On their screens, the Devourer ships continued to pulse with apparent vitality, their weapons still firing, their hulls seemingly intact. Admiral Veltar of the Altine Collective, her crystalline form flickering weakly from her damaged ship, managed to transmit a response. "Impossible. Our quantum resonance scanners show them at full operational capacity." "Your sensors read energy signatures," Minho explained patiently, as if teaching a classroom full of students. "Mine read biological functions. There's a difference." To demonstrate his point, he activated a command sequence that had been waiting in standby mode. Across the Devourer fleet, millions of nanobots simultaneously executed their final protocols. The result was immediate and spectacular. The massive mothership Eternal Consumption, which had been leading the Devourer assault, suddenly went completely dark. Its bioluminescent patterns faded like dying fireflies, its weapon pods retracted, and its hull stopped the constant rippling motion that indicated active bioarmor. Within seconds, it was just a floating mass of dead tissue and inactive machinery. Then another ship died, and another. Across the entire Devourer formation, vessels that had appeared fully operational moments before began shutting down in a cascade of biological failure. The nanobots had been waiting for this moment, keeping the ship's external systems functioning just long enough to maintain the illusion of a healthy fleet. "By the Seven Suns," whispered Commander Zex of the Vexari Third Squadron, watching his tactical display as red enemy contacts turned grey one after another. "They're all dead. They've been dead for over an hour." The Devourer fleet that had seemed unstoppable was revealed to be nothing more than a collection of corpses drifting through space. The biocannons that had been devastating the alien armada were actually running on residual power, their targeting systems guided by nanobots that had been programmed to make the weapons appear functional until the right moment. Admiral Threx stared at his displays in complete shock. The enemy force that had been destroying his fleet ship by ship was already eliminated. killed by microscopic machines he couldn't detect with his most advanced sensors. The humans had been conducting a completely different war, while the aliens fought what amounted to ghosts. "How long have you known?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Since before the battle started," Minho replied. "We've been tracking devourer movement patterns for 8 months. Every time they raided a human colony, we collected tissue samples, analyzed their biotechnology, and developed countermeasures. We knew exactly how to kill them. We just needed them to gather in one place." The revelation hit the alien commanders like a physical blow. While they had been planning glorious battle strategies and arguing about honor, the humans had been conducting a methodical scientific study of their enemy. Instead of seeking glory, they had sought understanding. Instead of fighting with pride, they had fought with intelligence. "The missing ships," Admiral Veltar realized, her harmonic voice filled with understanding. "The merchant vessels that disappeared near the outer rim, they weren't random attacks." "We volunteered them," Minho confirmed. "Crews knew the risks. They carried our nanobots to devourer ships, let themselves be captured, and allowed the biotechnology to be studied from the inside. 37 ships, over 1,500 crew members. They died to make this victory possible." The alien fleet hung in space, surrounded by the corpses of enemies they thought they had been fighting. The magnificent battle they had envisioned, the glorious victory they had planned, had been an illusion created by human technology and patience. For the first time in galactic history, the universe's most advanced military powers realized they had been completely outmaneuvered by the species they considered primitive. The massive Devourer command ship, Apex of Hunger, hung motionless in space for exactly 3 seconds after its entire fleet died around it. Then, with a speed that surprised even the human observers, it began turning away from the battlefield. The ship's biomechanical engines flared with brilliant blue fire as it accelerated toward the system's outer edge, leaving behind the corpses of its armada. The vessel stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull covered in writhing organic conduits that pulsed with desperate energy. Unlike the other Devourer ships, this one had no crew to poison with nanobots. The command ship was a single massive organism, a living entity that served as both vessel and pilot. It had watched its children die one by one, felt their neural connections fade as the microscopic human weapons consumed them from within. Now it wanted only to escape, to carry news of this defeat back to the Devourer home territories. Its massive brain, distributed throughout the ship's organic hull, processed the tactical data at superhuman speed. The human technology was unknown, undetectable, and apparently unstoppable. The Devourer Collective needed to know about this new threat. "It's escaping!" Admiral Threx shouted from his damaged bridge, watching the massive bioship accelerate past the wreckage of both fleets. "All remaining vessels pursue and engage." The few surviving alien ships tried to respond, but most were barely functional. The Vexari heavy cruiser, Crimson Vengeance, managed to fire a plasma bolt, but the energy beam dissipated harmlessly against the command ship's adaptive armor. The Altine vessel, Crystal Harmony, attempted to charge its solar lance, but the weapon system had been damaged in the earlier fighting. Captain Lee Minho sat calmly in his command chair, watching the fleeing Devourer through his tactical displays. He checked his chronometer with the casual precision of someone timing a cooking recipe rather than a military operation. "Sir," Lieutenant Park Jisoo called from her station, "the command ship is approaching the asteroid belt. Should we pursue?" "No. Need," Minho replied softly. "It's not escaping, it's arriving." The alien commanders listening to the communication channel fell silent, confused by the human captain's cryptic response. The Devourer command ship was clearly fleeing at maximum acceleration, already halfway to the system's edge. In another 10 minutes, it would reach the hyperspace jump point and vanish into the void between stars. But Minho knew something they didn't. While the aliens had been planning their glorious frontal assault, humanity had been preparing for every possible outcome. The battle they had just witnessed was only the visible part of a much larger operation that had been 6 months in the making. Deep within the asteroid belt that ringed the system's outer edge, 3 chunks of rock that had been drifting there for weeks suddenly came alive. What had appeared to be ordinary asteroids revealed themselves as something far more sophisticated. Hidden rail launchers, each one the size of a skyscraper, had been camouflaged as space debris and positioned along the most likely escape routes. The rail launchers had been assembled in secret by human construction crews over the past month, built using the same mining equipment that the aliens had mocked. Each weapon was essentially a massive magnetic acceleration tube, capable of launching projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. But instead of using exotic materials or energy weapons, they used the simplest ammunition possible: solid chunks of iron-nickel asteroid material, each weighing several thousand tons. The first rail launcher fired with a magnetic pulse that would have been visible from 3 star systems away if anyone had been looking in that direction. The chunk of asteroid accelerated to 30% of light speed in less than 2 seconds, becoming a relativistic projectile with the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon. The Devourer command ship's sensors detected the incoming threat, but physics made evasion impossible. At relativistic speeds, the projectile covered the distance between asteroid belt and target in the time it took a human heart to beat twice. The massive bioship began to turn, its organic hull rippling as it tried to present its strongest armor to the incoming threat. It didn't matter. When several thousand tons of matter traveling at 30% light speed meets any obstacle, the result is always the same, regardless of how advanced the target's defensive technology might be. The impact turned the apex of hunger into an an expanding cloud of superheated plasma that briefly outshone the system's primary star. The massive bioorganism that had lived for over 1,000 years had consumed entire planets and had commanded fleets across dozens of star systems, ceased to exist in less than a microsecond. But the human rail launchers weren't finished. The second projectile arrived 3 seconds later, striking the center of the expanding debris cloud to ensure complete destruction. The third projectile followed 5 seconds after that, purely as a demonstration of human thoroughness. In the sudden silence that followed the spectacular destruction, the various alien bridge crews stared at their displays in complete shock. The debris field where the Devourer command ship had been was already beginning to disperse, carrying the last traces of what had been the galaxy's most feared military force. Captain Minho finally stood from his command chair for the first time since the battle began. His movement was casual, unhurried, like someone getting up to make coffee rather than concluding the most important military victory in galactic history. "Next time," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the fleet communication channels, "maybe don't mute the quiet guy who's been fighting this enemy for 6 months already." Admiral Threx found his voice first, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "How did you know it would flee in that direction?" "Devourer command ships always retreat along the path of least gravitational resistance," Minho explained, settling back into his chair. "It's an evolutionary adaptation. From when they were deep space organisms, we've been tracking their movement patterns for 8 months, analyzing every retreat, every tactical withdrawal. They're not random, they're predictable." Commander Zex of the Vexari fleet, his reptilian voice filled with something approaching, asked the question that all the alien commanders were thinking. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the first human colony was attacked," Minho replied. "Every raid, every destroyed settlement, every missing ship, we learned something new. The Devourers thought they were hunting us, but we were actually studying them. Every encounter was a research opportunity." Admiral Veltar's harmonious voice chimed in, still weak from her damaged ship. "The colonies that were destroyed, they were deliberate sacrifices?" "Volunteers," Minho corrected firmly. "Every settlement knew the risks. Every crew member who flew into Devourer territory understood they might not come back. But they also knew their sacrifice would give us the data we needed to end this threat permanently." The alien admirals looked around at the debris field that had once been the most powerful military force in the galaxy. All destroyed by the species they had dismissed as primitive scavengers. The humans hadn't won through superior firepower or advanced technology. They had won through patience, planning, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for ultimate victory. "We listened," Minho said simply, his words carrying across the void to every surviving ship in the combined fleet. While you planned glory, we studied our enemy. While you argued about honor, we prepared for war. Patience beats pride every time. In the wreckage-strewn space around them, the last traces of the Devourer threat slowly dispersed into cosmic dust. The galaxy was safe, not because of heroic charges or glorious battles, but because one species had understood that the most dangerous enemy is often the one who stays quiet and takes notes. The war was over. Humanity had won, and the universe would never underestimate the quiet ones again. The end.